Throughout all of history, catchy sayings, profound phrases, and seemingly meaningless expressions have been passed down from generation to generation like little pearls of wisdom. But has it truly been just a long game of telephone where certain expressions can lose all of their original meaning? One common saying is, a jack of all trades, a master of none, right? With a comma being the is, meaning a jack of all trades is a master of none. And this common expression is basically saying, if you spread yourself too thin, you will never gain expertise in one skill. In other words, you're almost saying, if you put your eggs in all of the baskets, you'll never find your golden goose. But what if I were to tell you a number of stories about a number of people who spread themselves too thin? In other words, they didn't put all of their eggs into one basket. But before we get into the who's who of the jacks of all trades, let's first dive deep into the saying, jack of all trades, master of none. Where did it come from? Why is it our go-to phrase for people who want to go from job to job or hobby to hobby? Are we turning our passions into just phases? Should we slow down and just focus on one, maybe two things? Or is it something else entirely? So let's dig into that on this episode of Artem Alexandra, Conspiracy Theories.
Today, democracy can ebb away in communities whose citizens allow power to become concentrated in the hands of bosses. What I say goes, see? I'm the law around here. I'm the law around here. What I say goes, see? I'm the law around here.
It all started back in the days of Shakespeare. The first days, actually, the first ever print of the name Shakespeare. From the playwright, writer, dramatist, as well as critiquing pamphleteer Robert Greene, where he sunk his teeth into William Shakespeare in his self-titled Greene's Groat's Worth of Wit, Bought with a Million of Repentance, 1592. And I gotta first shout out, people back in the olden days wrote exactly like we did now, to which is meme lord, and you have to know the context and history of every single thing. And so without diving literally into the history of England, Greene called William Shakespeare an absolute Johannes factotum. So Johannes is not Jack, right? It's actually a guy. A specific guy. But factotum itself means you can do anything. Generally speaking, this is an employee of sorts who has any trade or skill. So, of all trades. An absolute Johannes of all trades. It is believed that Greene used the name Johannes to refer to the semi-famous writing secretary at the time, John Florio. And if you know anything about secretaries, they do just about everything for everyone all around them. Let's give a big round of applause to the secretaries of the world. But the truth of it is that Greene was trying to call William Shakespeare out as just an actor, trying to do everything and steal ideas and take them and call it his own. So he also called him an upstart crow. He also called him an upstart crow, beautified with our feathers. And analysts believe that these feathers that William Shakespeare beautified with was that he specifically plagiarized other people And so because William was an actor, he was able to watch all the writers do everything and learn, and then do it himself. And so in total, he called him a Johnny Do-It-All and was truly just super duper jealous of William Shakespeare's obvious skill. Okay, so he was just a big old jelly pants, calling him a jack of all trades. So when you think about it, the original jack of all trades was a dig and calling it a bad thing, but it's also kind of a good thing because William Shakespeare wrote a lot of stuff. And in the contest of how many words you write and add to the English dictionary, he actually beat Green by a few thousand words. I didn't know that was a competition, but if it is, I have started making up my own words. Let's hope we get to like 4,000. But truly, I do kind of get it when you watch someone like see all the best of the bests and you're like, you're just taking the best pieces and putting them all together. You're a copycat. Well, I gotta say that copycat went down in history as the best of the best, and that's just what happens. Maybe when you're a Johnny Do-It-All, or maybe when you're just William Shakespeare, I don't know. And so with our deep dive here into the history, this was in 1592, and the next time that this saying jack of all trades is ever recorded in any manner, because an absolute Johannes factotum is not actually the same thing at all, is in 1612. Sorry, I got a bit of a numbers reading out loud thing. But anyways, so Geoffrey Minshall, in his Essays and Characters of a Prison and Prisoners, wrote, "Some broken citizen who hath played jack of all trades." The next was in 1677 from the notes of a charter school headmaster named Martin Clifford, who wrote, "Your writings are like a jack of all trades shop. They have variety, but nothing of value." The next was in 1721 from Boston Newsletter, where they wrote, "Homo non unus negoti," or jack of all trades, and it would seem good at none. And then again in 1770, from the Gentleman's Magazine, they wrote, "Jack of all trades is seldom good at any." And so thus the phrase was born. Or was it? Because it seems to me it was just around and people used it. And so why do all of the Wikipedia pages and articles and every single thing on the internet say that it was originally a compliment? All of these examples to me pretty much say jack of all trades. You're bad at everything. You're not good at one thing. And so, truly, what is it? All I know is the joke is on Green. William Shakespeare is far more famous than him. Green is basically only famous for having a pamphlet that drags William Shakespeare. And so is this a story of jealousy, of love and hatred and, all of that dramatic stuff? Or is it just resentment and pride? And we're calling out the jacks of all trades because we're jealous. I have no idea if William Shakespeare was a thief or not. You let me know. That was not a part of my research studies assignment. But with all of that being said, I do have to shout out, we have yet to uncover the actual root origin of the phrase jack of all trades, master of none. And do you know why that is? Because that's only half of it. That's half of the phrase. But when did we cut it in half? Right? Or should I say, when did we add the second half? Conspiracy music. Seemingly to pinpoint things, though, the Master of None could be taken from the Boston Newsletter's Good at None. And so we could say that we have basically been saying this is a diss and not a compliment for about 300 years. But the problem of this is, with this saying, we are being taught to stick to one thing, to keep our nose down to the grindstone, to, practice makes perfect. Work and hone your skills, build your merit and gain your experience, become an authority in your passion. But what if I told you this phrase was literally never meant to discourage you from being a jack of all trades? That the master of none part was simply added to discourage people from having hobbies, from not putting all of their eggs into one basket, that it's actually been weaponized. Being a jack, that is, has been weaponized against us. Beyond Green's critique, the critique against William Shakespeare, the saying jack of all trades was originally a compliment. It used to be a good thing. If you can do a lot of things, if you're handy in a lot of areas, if you can be reliable and good at solving problems, then you are an extremely useful person, especially in a small society or, tribe, if you will, where people have problems and they come to you to fix them. You're the jack of all trades then. You can be depended on. And so, why are all the examples of opposites? All of the historical, pinpointed, literary examples, like, of what history is, the history written down, why are they all negative expressions? That's the conspiracy theory. Because every single thing, Wikipedia, every article, every single blog post about the expression says it used to be a compliment. It used to be regarded as a good thing. But when was this? When is this used to be? Okay? Because there are no examples. I like to pinpoint examples, but you're only pointing at the bad ones, like the negative ones, not bad examples. But in this case, they are bad examples because there is nothing complimentative, okay? Now, as for the term jack, we've actually been called jack for a while now. Not me, I'm Alex, but we as a human being, look at that jack riding off of his track. I don't remember exactly how the Pink Floyd song goes, but to get down to the brass tacks, actual root origin of the word jack of all trades, or phrase jack of all trades, we actually have to look at the name Jack. And so, funny enough, the word jack has been used for eons to connotate the everyday man. The everyday man. From the Dictionary of Old Occupations, jack frequently refers to a sailor, or a nickname for anyone called John, also a general term for a young male servant or young man working in any occupation. The latter may be a derogatory term similar to knave. In addition to this, we also have jacksmiths, which are people who smith, but more or less a jack can do anything in any occupation. Working in any occupation. You know what I mean? A jack of all trades. a jack is a jack of all trades. That's what I'm kind of getting to here, is that a jack just is a jack of all trades. There's no other way to say it. The original phrase was just one word. That's it. And it had nothing to do with master of none. Maybe calling someone a knave is derogatory, but if that's your social status to a knight, then I don't know what to say about that last part. But anyways, the common use of the term jack can actually be seen 200 years before Green's pamphlet in a poem, an entire book of a poem called Confessio Amantis from 1930 from the man John Gower, or Jower. I doubt it's John Jower. But in his Confessio Amantis, he wrote, "While that man hath good to give, with great routes he may live, and hath his friends over all, and ever rich of him tell shall. There while he hath his full pack, they say a good fella is Jack. But when it faileth at last, and on his prease they overcast, for thane is there none other law, but Jack is a good fella. Then they him pover and needy see, they let him pass and farewell he. All that he wend of company is then torned to folly." If you wanted to hear the rest of that. But if you ask me, the original sense of what a jack is or was is someone who is dependable, adaptable, resourceful, and indispensable. And if you don't know what indispensable means, it means very, very important person, almost irreplaceable. At least I'm pretty sure that's what that word means. But as the centuries have passed, this phrase has soured. A jack of all trades is no longer the man of the hour. I'm sorry, I just read a poem, I got a rhyme now. But by the 17th century alone, 200 years later, we hated the jack. We do not respect the jack. But by the 17th century, Jack was no longer the hero of this story. He was a cautionary tale. And what I mean by this is that for the past 500, 450 years, we have demonized what a jack of all trades is and means. And so for this reason, we have added the phrase, a master of none, just unequivocally. But why? What changed? And who stood to gain from this complete transformation of the saying? But from Green to the Boston magazine to the Gentleman's Magazine, the message was very clear. A jack of all trades is not to be trusted. But isn't it just too curious how this message has just persisted through centuries? The jack of all trades, master of none. We have subtly discouraged what it means to be a jack and what it means to be versatile, almost as if it were by design. In a capitalist society, specialization is king. You are told to pick one path, one passion, one expertise, and pour everything into it. Why, though? Why must we pour everything into one American dream? Because the system thrives on predictability, dependence, efficiency. Whereas you and I both know a jack of all trades is a wild card. Versatile, yes, but dependable? To a stable system? No. No, because if the government wants you to buy bread from them, they're not gonna want a whole bunch of businessmen knowing how to make their own bread. That's just unprofitable. So that's the basic conspiracy theory that I'm laying down here, is we have completely demonized and weaponized and destroyed what it means to be a jack of all trades, so that we are dependent on our government and the system that we live in. Isn't that great? No, not great. But the long and short of it is being independent isn't something that falls into a neatly packaged system of profit margins constantly going up. It doesn't. And so here's the real thing that they don't want you to know. The government, the big bad boys, the guys who have all the money, right? Is that a jack of all trades, a master of none is not the end of the quote. And if it is the end of the quote and we've only added to it, then we've added to it to take away what we've also added to it. Okay, I'm gonna do it for you, for the camera. So we have this, the original saying, the jack of all trades, and then we added a master of none to change it from a plus sign to a minus sign. Now we have added a third part that turns it back into a positive phrase. How about that? So the true phrase, as we all know and love it today, is a jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. It all comes back to, don't put all of your eggs into one basket, is the truism. But nowhere online can this longer version be corroborated by being the original version. Once more, up and down the internet, all day long, it'll say, this phrase used to be a compliment. But nowhere does it say a master of none, sometimes, often, whatever, master of none. No, I am convinced this is a new addition to the saying to make it the original saying to begin with. This is the long line of telephone. Our history of etymology goes. We've gone so far that we've gone all the way back to the original, which is pretty great, but now it's a lot longer for no reason. A lot of psychological aspects in there, when it could just simply be as short as, jack of all trades are awesome, you should be one. If you ask me though, if this was the original saying, or if just jack of all trades was the original saying, and it was originally positive, it has been watered down to shit. It has been watered down so much so that we have almost entirely lost the purpose of the saying, to which is, you should have a diverse set of skills. It is good for you to have a diverse set of skills. But why? Why have we changed it to a master of none? You know what I'm gonna say. Because it's bad for capitalism. It affects the status quo. If people go around knowing how to make their own bread, they're not going to be dependent on the bread maker or the grocery store or the guys who fill a warehouse full of bread or the guys who just drive the trucks around. Like, there are so many middlemen for every single thing that if you did one of those yourself, how would the system continue? You know, not fall and fail and be terrible. But long and short of it, of the whole story, of the history of the phrase, from my just a little bit of digging, the original phrase was Jack. Then it was Jack of all trades as a diss, complete jealousy. And we knew this. We knew this so much so that there isn't much evidence for like 100 years or like 50 years, I can't remember. Anyways, but then again, in the print, in the media, we see it as just a diss track all over until we get to the modern age of humans being on the media. Humans, X, classic, we are the media now. Humans today are recording their thoughts and feelings, saying, yeah, no, master of none, but oftentimes is better than a master of one. So that is the history lesson of this beautiful saying.
You can roughly locate any community in the world, somewhere along a scale running all the way from democracy to despotism.
Now, I want to take you down a path, a montage, if you will, of people who are, in fact, jacks. And so to start, I want to go a little pre-montage with a nice deep dive into who I think is the pinnacle of, the epitome of all jacks of all trades. And that is the very much so fictional, but also kind of derived from a real life character, Sherlock Holmes. If you don't know who Sherlock Holmes is, I don't blame you, but I kind of do, because there are so many books, so many movies, as well as so many television series about Sherlock Holmes. But again, if you don't know him, he is a detective with the world's most renowned deductive skills, as well as reasoning and logic. But the truth of the matter is that he is quite the hobbyist, and all of these hobbies culminate together in what is called interdisciplinary knowledge. And so just to go over a list of a couple of his hobbies, we got... My tortoise is making noises. Funny enough, in the most recent television adaptation, Elementary, Sherlock Holmes also has a tortoise. Anyways, so Sherlock Holmes is famous for assigning unto himself numerous hobbies, such as reading, writing, studying tobacco ash, flora and fauna, poisons, anatomy, playing the violin, lockpicking, chemistry, boxing, fencing, philosophical discussion, disguise in acting, learning languages, and accents. And so to quote Sherlock Holmes from the very famous A Study in Scarlet from 1887, he says, "To a great mind, nothing is little." In other words, being a master of none kind of doesn't exist, because as long as you know at least 1% of one thing, then you aren't a master, no, but you know something about it. You know more, infinitely more, than someone who knows nothing. And so, do you have beginner knowledge? Yes. But do you have zero knowledge? No. Zero knowledge no longer exists because you have learned at least 1%. And so, in a jack of all trades, master of none, yes, maybe it's not master of none, but to its truest extent, you at least know more than nothing. And that in and of itself is beautiful. From A Case of Identity, 1891, Sherlock says, "It has long been an axiom of mine that the little things are indefinitely the most important." And so even though a little is only a little, again, a little is a lot more than nothing. And so there we have found our jack of all trades. If you know just a little about something, you will find one day that that little bit of information will prove to you the most useful moment, and you will have never realized it if you didn't know it. And so just one more, maybe two, from Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle. My name is Sherlock Holmes, and it is my business to know what other people do not know. And so say, for instance, you are like in the mist, and you are one of people in a bunch in an abandoned grocery store surrounded by aliens. Or maybe you're on the TV show Lost, and you're abandoned on an island. Say any of these instances. Say, for instance, you're quarantined to your house. A little bit of one single skill will take you so far. For instance, Kate, in the very first episode of Lost, Jack asks her, "Do you sew?" And she's like, "I put up my drapes." And he's like, "That's good enough. Come here, sew me up." Because as long as you know how to put a needle into another thing and that thing connects another, that's as much as you need to know to suture me up right now, girlfriend. And so, does she know how to suture? Does she know how to sew people up? No, she didn't even know how to sew. She put up her own drapes. She sewed together a hem stitch. That's not knowing how to sew. But it's an example of a little bit goes a long way in a very drastic situation. But not every situation is drastic. Sometimes you just will never know when you know to know, But from the Boscombe Valley Mystery, 1891, there is nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact. And so if we are to take a jack of all trades, master of none, as one of those expressions we just hear and listen to and don't question and take it as a fact, then we will be convinced, oh, I guess putting all of our eggs into one basket is the way to success. It is the only way to get the big, big bucks. And it's not. It is not. Okay? And just a short point from the Science Education Resource Center from the Carleton College. Interdisciplinary teaching helps advance critical thinking and cognitive development. And so without actually literally going into neural chemistry and brain awesomeness, interdisciplinary knowledge helps you expand your brain. When you make a connection in your brain, it fires synapses. Can you see this? It fires something that connects one point of your brain to another. And this little strand here is knowledge. And it makes your brain bigger. It makes you smarter. It helps you understand how to think faster. And I'm not going to say much more on it because I have absolutely zero research to tell you, but it's true. Like I always say, I want to die with my brain like a potted plant with literally no room to breathe. The roots are so full. Just to go down the list, here's our montage of all the jacks of all trades, just a top 1%, like a literally top 0.00001%. But here we go. First on the list is Terry Crews, actor, former NFL player, artist, furniture designer, and pianist. What the fuck? Then we have Vin Diesel, actor, Dungeons and Dragons enthusiast, as well as music producer. Rod Stewart, the singer, also a model train fanatic. Beyonce, singer, also a beekeeper, fashion designer, philanthropist. And then we got classic athletes like David Beckham, soccer star, but also a beekeeper and motorcycle enthusiast. Shaq O'Neal, basketball player, musician, law enforcement officer, businessman? No, that's less questionable than law enforcement officer, but still. Tom Daley, Olympic diver, also a knitter and crocheter. Couple more. Steve Martin, comedian, actor, also insanely good at the banjo. He's also a magician and an art collector. Or Jamie Lee Curtis, the Scream Queen, actress, children's book author, photographer, blogger. Very similarly, Tom Hanks, actor, also typewriter collector, historian, and novelist. Neil deGrasse Tyson, astrophysicist, famous author, speaker, as well as wine enthusiast and ballroom dancer. Or Keanu Reeves, an actor and musician, motorcyclist, race car driver, and martial artist. Or one of my favorite people, Marie Curie. She did physics and chemistry, and she was an avid cyclist. Fucking R.I.P. Marie Curie. But let's get into the real nitty-gritties. The founding people of our modern age. Theodore Roosevelt, a president, also soldier, explorer, naturalist, boxer, and writer. Nikola Tesla, the engineer, physicist, inventor, was also just a philosopher and a poet as well. Okay? Benjamin Franklin, scientist, politician, writer, inventor, musician, chess player. He also loved frickin' swimming as well. Lastly, I gotta shout out my boy, Leonardo da Vinci, painter, sculptor, anatomist. Like, he literally showed how we understand the human body today. Literally to this day, we know how bodies work because of an artist, engineer, architect, inventor, musician, and writer. All of these glorious, multi-talented figures are jacks of all trades, are people who did not put all of their eggs into one basket. Okay, I know Beyonce might be a little bit of a stretch here, but still, if you want to go out and do beekeeping in your spare time, yes, that is very cool and quite a hell of a trade, okay? But put simply enough, for instance, Charles Bachman, the father of modern computing, figured it out because of what he knew of football and runs and passes. I don't know football terms, but the way the pictures are drawn, he was like, that's how computers should work, just like the way the pictures are drawn. And I know we just went on a long, big rampage, but I have to share from the School of Education, American University, aka the school that's in Washington, D.C. Interdisciplinary education draws from several subjects that are presented in concert to facilitate the learning process. For example, the evolution of Japanese cinema requires knowledge of history, a foreign language, culture, and the art of filmmaking. Since era and culture directly influence artistic expression, the interdisciplinary approach to teaching Japanese cinema is the most appropriate. An example in this is Yojimbo, released in 1961, depicts the feudal Japanese era when ronin, samurai without a master, are bodyguards for hire. The film directly influenced A Fistful of Dollars, which is a spaghetti western remake which was released in 1964, starring Clint Eastwood. In terms of interdisciplinary education, comparisons between Eastern and Western culture, film genres, and historical accuracy could all be explored. And so that's just one example of a for instance. Another for instance is how I got my own job. I wrote PR, product descriptions, but I also made YouTube videos in my spare time, learning how to edit and, do everything YouTube. And so a company was looking for someone with literally all of those skills and then some, and I also had them. Another example would be like my love for doll houses. Sorry, I'm shivering. I'm literally freezing. But my love for doll houses, do you know what that requires? It requires, woodworking, but also, sculpting with clay or painting or literally anything that I decide to do by hand. I'm just saying, there's a lot that one person can do. And whereas we've all been told our entire lives, we cannot put all of our eggs into one basket. And so why, I ask you, I plead to you, why has this saying, a jack of all trades, a master of none, persisted so much? That's the conspiracy. It's a little silly, it's not a real conspiracy, but that's it. But in conclusion, being a jack of all trades, master of none is in fact better than being a master of none. And I don't even mean to say that really, because we haven't looked at any people that are masters of one, okay? We've only looked at people who are masters of many different things, to which William Shakespeare, Leonardo da Vinci, Terry Crews, Shaq O'Neal, like there are so many people out there. Elon Musk himself is a wannabe jack of all trades. Let me just tell you, he wants to be seen as a man who can do literally everything. He pays people to also, do that. So we're not going to get into that today. He is no longer on my list of examples because as we all recently found out, he wants to be seen as the world's best video game player and, Doge King and Tesla founder, PayPal founder. He wants to be seen as everything, and that is solely because it's good. And so not to get totally super crazy in a conspiracy theory video, we have been fooled as a society to be dependent on the states, on the government, on capitalism, and as the system as a working whole, when you and I both know it does not work, okay? And so what I am saying here is that sometimes we need to expand our horizons, okay? For instance, I do PR, I do philosophy, I do art. One secret is I also do math. I love numbers. I'm a big fan of numbers. And so I also enjoy playing with the stock market. I got what they call diamond hands, so it's not a real game because I just put money into it, not out. But let me tell you, it's a skill anyone can learn. Okay? It is not for the demonstrably rich, the monstrably rich. It's not for the monsters only, okay? We gotta take back being dependent from the freaking country. It's awful. The true keyness here is that I do believe that we are taught that, the grind mentality means no distractions. But what we can see in all of the interdisciplinary knowledge is that distractions can be fantastic. And I think the funniest part is that in every single mystery crime solving cop show, the distractions are what solve the crimes. I can't think of one exact example, but say for instance we got a bad guy and blah 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 blah, but then cut to we're at home and the kid's all like, I like trains or something, and the dad's all like, oh my god, it was the train. Okay, that's probably the worst example ever, but that's what it is as soon as you let your mind go and have fun and have the ability to literally just not use more than 10% of your brain. I'm not saying it's possible, but it is possible to stretch from one point to another by making connections that other people wouldn't largely have seen. So say for instance, you're Charles Bachman and computers are just awful and you gotta watch, I think it was on Dan Aykroyd's show, anyways, you gotta see things from new possibilities because he's all like, this isn't working. We have to take from this discipline and apply it to this one, then it will work better. And so, yeah. And that's not even to say that every single hobby is meant to be directly productive. I do think that we all just need to be happy and do what we love and have a good time. Not every single thing needs to be productive. That is the grind mindset telling us to work, 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 not realizing that we're pigeonholing us into a view where new ideas have a hard time getting in. And that's the real basis of the thing, is this is how you expand your imagination. This is how you be more like Sherlock Holmes. I know me as a human being, I want to be so much like, literally, I want to be Sherlock Holmes. Okay? I wish I was a detective in the 18th century. That'd be fantastic. But I'm obviously a woman in the 21st century, and that sucks. Anyways, but I just have to shout out, as someone living in America under an individualistic society, the truly only way it seems to fulfill the American dream is to understand what it means to have interdisciplinary knowledge, expanded knowledge. Say, for instance, you want to start a YouTube page, but you're all like, I need an editor, I need someone to make the thumbnail art, I need, a script writer. And it's like, why aren't you doing every single thing yourself? That's what all of the big bad boys did. I'm just saying, most people, if you go onto Shark Tank, or not if you go watch Shark Tank, you will hear them say, oh, I didn't hire people for as long as possible, or I didn't take investors for as long as possible. Yeah, because you want to do it all yourself and keep it in. And that's not to say teams are bad, but if you don't have the money to do that, don't do that. Another example, very much so exactly the same, in the writing community on X or Twitter, I see people, oh, I need an editor, I need someone to do the cover art. And I'm over here like, that is a lot more understandable than a YouTube. But you could attempt the cover art yourself. You can also use photographs or, just attempt art. It is insanely mind-blowing to me that people don't even attempt to do art. But I was raised, like, here I am, itty bitty baby with a crayon in my hand. So I think I don't have perspective on that one. But in closing, I do not exactly know how we have just dangerously misremembered this awesome saying, in that if you can do it all, that's fantastic. if people can depend on you for anything, that is fantastic. If you are dependent on others for everything, that is not fantastic, mostly. I don't know how it happened, but it has, and I definitely know how. It was capitalism, it was awfulness, it was awful people, and I'm here to set the record straight. We need interests, when we need hobbies, and we need Gucci, we don't need Louis. Krayshawn. Anyways, but I want to leave you with this. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a more than devout Buddhist. But I mean, I'm also like a Taoist, Buddhist, Nietzschean. It's kind of complicated. But anyways, I want to leave you with a quote from Buddhism. Okay, I'm gonna completely destroy the pronunciation of the name of this renowned Vietnamese Buddhist monk, but I read it so often. I can't believe I've never looked up the pronunciation. But anyways, from Thich Nhat Hanh, true self is non-self. The awareness that the self is made only of non-self elements. There is no separation between the self and other, and everything is interconnected. So I don't know if you saw my video from like 2 or 3 years ago at this point, but I am a huge advocator of the non-self and that ourselves don't exist. I'm not Alex, I am this in this with a name. That is how it works. And so if you look at yourself as a businessman or as a nurse or as, I literally can't think of any occupations, as a fry cook or a restaurant manager or as an, I don't know, then you are tying that deeply to your identity as well as your sense of self. And so if you don't want that to be who you are, you should understand that that is not who you are. And a jack of all trades is basically this principle at its highest, because you don't tie yourself down to one exact trade. You aren't pigeonholed, you're not cornered into any one thing to say, I am this. No, because you're anything. You're an ever-changing being. And that's my whole thing, my whole shtick, my whole philosophy is that change is so easy as soon as you let go of everything you're attached to. And so if you want to dig into interdisciplinary action or knowledge or understand how your imagination can grow simply by gaining hobbies and applying the techniques you learn from one hobby into another. I kind of forgot how I started that sentence, but you know, that's how you do it. You just do it. For me, I definitely have some super undiagnosed ADHD, ADD, OCD, a whole bunch of other stuff. And so I might maybe be the either best or worst person to talk about this. But all I know is I got a whole lot of hobbies, but I haven't dropped any of them. I've only added to them. I want to do oil painting. I want to build with my balsa wood. I want to sculpt with all my clay. But also at the same time, like I said before, put all of that crap together, you're making a dollhouse, okay? I also built a jewelry chest for my sister for Christmas like 2 years ago and used a whole bunch of my fabric and batting, aka pillows or stuffed animal stuffing. And I just have that laying around, girlfriend, because I got hobbies. I have no time for it. Do you know writing is the most time-consuming hobby in the world? I gotta say, what? Who knew? But I just gotta reiterate it again. Being a jack of all trades is awesome. But for me personally, I do wish I had more time on my hands so that I could be a master of all of them. You know? Because if a jack of all trades is a master of none, maybe if more time in the world existed, you could master many, many, many things. I'm just saying. But at the same time, can you ever really master anything? If you go with Buddhist theory, knowledge is infinite in any one direction. And so, like, a master of one might not even exist. Because who knows, maybe if you had a better, not better, but like more hobbies, you could even be better at what you're doing right now and what you're calling yourself a master of one at, you know? I'm just saying. So that's it for me, folks. I really appreciate you coming down, hearing my whole thing. I may or may not tend to repeat myself a lot, but that may or may not be my passion just ripping right through the seams. So I'm gonna stop shivering and turn my heat back on, put a freaking sweater on. So yeah, this has been a really great talk, and I cannot wait for you to see the next video I have lined up for you on our schedule here. We don't have a schedule, okay? Ever since there's been a lot of death in my life, I'd say, you know what? The odds are schedules are the worst things in the world, and I might as well just flow at the seat of my pants, you know, get videos out to you as soon as possible, or take my time, because mental health is very real and very important to listen to, okay? And so yeah, for our next video, I have an interview lined up with a super amazing photographer, but I also have a video much so like this one where we like, you know, like all of my videos where we sit down and I just gab at you, and that is about solipsism. Unfortunately, kind of, sort of, maybe every single person in the world is talking about how AI is taking over the internet, and that's basically what my solipsism video is about. But everyone needs to learn about the actual subject, because the word solipsism came up very, I don't know, a long time before AI was a thing. Okay? But did it come up a long time before AU was a thing? Little solipsistic joke right there. Anyways, yeah, so that was it for the Jack of all trades. Again, Sherlock Holmes is my absolute favorite. But yeah, so that's gonna be it for me today. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I cannot wait to hear all of your beautiful thoughts in the comments. Check them down below. I'm gonna be doing my absolute best at replying to each and every one of you guys. So yeah, if you got a bunch of hobbies, what are they? And has anything ever like interconnected before for you? That'd be super fun story time in the comments. So, okay, I gotta go. It's bedtime. But I love you. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I cannot wait to hear from you. Thank you so much if you got all the way to the end of this video. By the way, you are a super duper freaking trooper star, because not many people do. It's about 3%. So if you're in that top 3%, know you're a real one, okay? A freaking rock star. And I love you, and I super duper appreciate it. All right. You go catch some new hobbies. or just get into the old ones. Apparently, that's what I'm doing. I've always been into the stock market, between you and me. All right, I gotta stop gabbing and go to bed. Okay, so bye. I love you.
In the middle of the night, I had an epiphany. I wanted to write it down, but I was